And we're live. Thanks for joining us. Today we're hanging out with Alex Shanks-Abel.
Howdy.
My name is Alan.
And I'm Bear.
And Alex is a writer, you introduce yourself.
Yeah, come on, man.
Yeah, I'll do a little quick rundown here. I'm Alex Shanks-Abel. If you don't mind me speaking for a minute.
I forgot. I'm sorry.
What?
Go for it.
You say I was Alex Abel?
Yeah, I forgot. You got married.
I got married.
Shanks-Abel.
I still haven't changed my name legally, so it's perfectly okay for you to call me Alex Abel.
Okay.
I got married a little over a year ago, but I'll fill in the paperwork someday. Next Friday. We've been saying that for
So you're not married right now?
Not yet.
Like, technically.
Technically.
But you are.
I am.
Who are you?
I'm Alex Shanks-Abel.
Are you a writer?
I am. So I run a small publishing company called Flaming Crab Games that publishes and sells PDFs through a few online storefronts. We operate under a license that produces supplements compatible with the Pathfinder role-playing game, which is basically an up-to-date and open source version of the 3rd edition of Dungeons and Dragons. That's how companies like mine can exist. So we're best known for our Letters from the Flaming Crab series, where we make quirky but functional stuff that nobody else has made or probably doesn't want to make.
Right.
So, for example, we've got a book on magic weather, another one on magical food, another on a thrilling subject like banking and currency in D&D, and another one on making realistic sewers that's coming out soon.
Realistic sewers.
Realistic sewers.
Hey, that's important. For anyone that's played Baldur's Gate 1, they know.
Anyone that's played D&D... first level. So we're switching gears today. We're still an art podcast. You're not listening to the wrong thing or watching the wrong thing. Alex is somebody I know that right out of his few years in college started IP, his own personal product, and has grown his business from just himself writing to you manage other editors and writers now and illustrators sometimes. I've illustrated for you, and he's a good friend of mine, which is why he joins me in Washington. Bear met him through me, and yeah, so we thought it was a lot of what this podcast is about is bridging that gap between hugely or celebrity status professional to where we are, who are breaking into the industry or maybe have a modicum of success.
Right.
I think you're perfect to talk about growing a business from that level.
Yeah, I think like both of you, I'm somebody who is still relatively new to the industry, being in it for less than 5 years and still growing. And it seems like what you guys talked about on earlier shows is, the process and going from just starting out to relative success where you've got hundreds, maybe thousands of fans. And it's difficult for people who might be Donatos or Todds to try to view from the perspective of most of your viewers how to have success at a small level when they've been at their level for 20 years or so.
Right. And you have to think that when they were in our shoes, the process was different back then. They didn't have all the resources, and the internet wasn't booming like it is now. So
yeah, I couldn't imagine myself having any sort of success if it weren't for Facebook, if I'm being honest.
That's true. I think that's why a lot of people get stuck at like right where we are, where you're like, oh, you maybe had one successful thing, or I got a lot of recognition for this thing, but you're still not off the ground. And you're wondering what went wrong. This happened to me. You probably Bear, and it's like, well, you wouldn't have had that initial success maybe without the internet, and so you maybe got one thing that gives you recognition, but not the all in.
And I'm sure there's a lot more of us today too.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So,
but we introduced why we have a writer on the podcast a little bit, and for me, it's the perspective we can get out of this from all the various genres. And we talked in one of our podcasts about how we got here and our interest in art. So what led you from playing tabletop and from writing to wanting to say, hey, I'm doing this now?
To be honest, it's not that much of a romantic process. For me, I think just one day I was reading a Pathfinder product and just going, hey, why the heck can't I make something like this? So I spent like 2 or 3 weeks just looking up, seeing how somebody who was just like me, who had zero experience doing even writing in the past, how I could break into the industry, and found that basically anybody can, apply for a license through somebody like Paizo LLC and just dive in there. So for me, I just wanted to see if I could make a product, and so then spent a couple months typing something up, getting a license, getting a few people to edit it, approve it. They were just personal friends, and the rest is
And then
history.
you launched it. So your initial idea was like and I think a lot of people have this idea, like I'm playing D&D or I'm watching a movie or something like that, and you're like, oh, I could create something like this, and but you did it. You
Yeah, I
followed
mean,
through.
played D&D at that point for 5 years or so, effectively every weekend. So I think that was 200, 300 sessions of D&D that were each like 5 hours. And I forget what the rule is for becoming a master on something, but I had been
2,000 hours.
I think at that point I had basically been playing D&D for 2,000 hours, and I was like, hey, I'm sure I understand the system just as well as any other writer that actually writes for the system if I've actively played it, created probably 50 plus characters. And
Okay.
yeah.
Well, so run me through your day to day. Like, what is for people that, I mean, I don't even know, what does your 8 hours look like? Your 12 hours?
So that has evolved, if that's the right word, year to year, because I've been trying to figure out what I want to do. So the first year that I did this, like probably most people, it was me doing the writing, it was me doing the layout, and effectively just everything but the art, and just sitting at a desk typing for 8 hours a day, throwing in drafts for class ideas, throwing out most of them. But kind of skipping past that, today what I do is a little bit more of an administrative job. So I kind of have today more of a quality control editing type role. I kind of come in at the beginning of each product, set up the backbone of the product, what it's going to be about, what kind of vision we're going to have from the product with the developer, and then kind of stepping away from the product, letting the writers do just about everything, and then coming in to make sure that the ship can sail. So for me, I spend probably, depending if it's Kickstarter season or not, let's assume it's Kickstarter season because that's when I'll be working the most, if you will. I'll be spending roughly 8 hours a day managing social media, promoting a product, answering emails, running the Kickstarter, maybe solving the occasional dispute between writers, different visions, and uploading products. So for me, I mean, it's getting up at 8 or 9 in the morning and then roughly working until dinner time, answering emails, questions, helping morph people's vision for a product they do for me.
So I guess the question out of that is, when did it start? When did it make the change from being the hobby and you were interested in doing it to you waking up at 8 or in the morning and working on it all day long?
Yeah, that's kind of a genuine moment. Like, when did you, like, of course, like after you had even published your own thing, when did you say like, oh, I'm committed to this as a career?
So after I put out my first 3 products, I was rather surprised that I was getting a sale from something about once a week, and then about a sale every day from a different product. So when I got 1 sale per day, I decided to try doing it half-time, or working a regular daytime job 3 or 4 days a week, and then pounding writing and editing basically every day but Sunday, just to give myself a bit of a breather. Unfortunately, my situation was a little bit lucky. For me, deciding to do it full time was after my wife got her master's and got a really nice job offer, and we decided I would be the one that would work a stay-at-home flexible job. And that's my personal situation. Is I'm lucky enough to do this with a wife that has a steady, stable career.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. People who get wives have the ability to, like, they bring home the bacon, and it gives the people the ability to work.
Because quite frankly, you might put out a product that just doesn't resonate with people. You might run a Kickstarter and it might fail, and you're just not going to, or maybe something does better than you expected and you're paying by a royalty basis. And so you might be, having a negative income 1 month, even if you have a somewhat steady income for 6 months in a row.
Well, you're learning as you go. Like when we were in college, maybe there are now, but even 5 years ago when we were in school, when you took a marketing or a business class, they're still teaching you about like brand loyalty and identity. And no class in college is sitting there like, this is how you do a successful Kickstarter. These are the right days to post on Facebook. These are all the social media, how to grow your own IP, even though they'll help a little bit. And so it's really a learning process, and you're free to fail. But failure doesn't work well economically sometimes.
Certainly not. Yeah, and kind of going with that marketing business class type thing. If you're going to be doing somebody diving into a creative field, whether it be art, writing, or something, a little bit of both, I don't think a marketing class is going to be able to teach you how to make your specific niche product.
It's true.
Your audience is going to be different than anybody else's, and it's a constant learning process. I don't think any class can teach you how to do that.
Right, and it'll be different from everyone else's if it's a good product. Like, I'm someone who's never played tabletop D&D. I've only played Baldur with you guys. But I know I have friends here in Nashville that play tabletop. You guys have pretty much your whole lives. And then I get introduced to you, Alex, and you're making these products which aren't just quirky. Like, they're introducing it's a new product to D&D, especially for someone like me on the outside. Like, you're making these really intricate little things that don't necessarily change how you play, but they change the face of the game and how fun it is, really.
Yeah, so that can lead it. Like, what was your last product that you kickstarted?
The last product that we made, I mentioned my Letters from the Flaming Crab series, where we try to make each month something weird and different, like the magic weather. The book that was most successful and hit off with people, understandably, was a product on making magic food. And so the original product was about a 10-page PDF with, I think it was 20 recipes in it, that within a couple months it sold hundreds of copies and ended up being a product of the day on the store that we were selling through. So we decided to launch a Kickstarter where we were like, heck, why don't we make a book that's got 100 recipes that's printed out like a cookbook that players and characters can make, so that you can make a magical pizza at your home, bring it to the gaming table, and then have your character be a chef that hands out the pizza in game.
See, I dig it. It makes it more involved, really. All of the things you've put out make the game more involved in the way that you play.
Yeah, the thing that makes Dungeons and Dragons or any tabletop role-playing game more interesting than a computer game is there's much more of a human element to it. And so I think for us, we're inspired to make products that make the game more real, more human, even if it is more magical.
Right.
More genuine.
Yeah. Who could have known last year that your most successful product this year this year so far would be a cookbook that you kickstarted? I bet if you type in cookbook on Kickstarter, I don't know, maybe you get a lot of searches.
I mean, it makes sense. You even see the guys in talking about digital games like World of Warcraft, that you see the guys logging all those hours and fishing and cooking and stuff that's not really a core part of the game, but they like it because it's a more human element.
Yeah. And when we launched the Kickstarter, something I didn't expect was, Heck, I think it was a full-time job responding to excited emails from people who are being like, "Oh my goodness, I've always wanted to play as chef in a game. I cook all the time in World of Warcraft, and I've got this pizza recipe. Can I please submit it? I love this pizza, and I want my character to eat this pizza." And
See, that's awesome to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've done other things. You've done like libraries and banks, currency, things like that.
Can you talk about Bosco's spells a little bit? The goofy spells.
Okay.
Everyone should know. Yeah.
The product that might have given us a strange amount of success was it was probably the 4th PDF that I released, if I'm remembering correctly, where I basically just, for those of you that play D&D, we basically made a punny version of 0-level spells that are, no offense to wizards, but mostly useless. Like Acid Splash, Detect Magic is useful, Resistance, stuff like that. And basically I just made a incredibly dumb version of each spell that could be cast if you had spell failure.
Some spells.
Just an example.
So if somebody rolls a 1 in combat, what's a spell that might...
Yeah, so if they effectively roll a 1 for casting a spell, for example, Acid Splash, there's a chance that they would cast Acid Stash, and instead of shooting acid at somebody, a tiny little mustache would attach itself to the enemy. And you know what? People absolutely loved it. Probably because it was unashamed. It was just dumb, and we were proud of the fact that it was dumb, and it was free. And I think we're close to approaching 10,000 downloads for that book.
Wow.
Well, for me, like, I'm thinking realistically, I'm a wizard. I'm just starting out. I'm level 1 or 2. I don't know what I'm doing. I might miscast something.
Well,
it adds a little bit of realism to it.
What was like Ray of Enfeeblement? What did that become? Do you remember?
I think Ray of Enfeeblement is a higher level spell.
Oh, it is.
So, for example, Create Water became Berate Water. Open Clothes was an easy one because we just made it Open Clothes. And so there's a chance where you try to open up a door magically and
all of your clothes pop off.
Just
pop off. That's awesome.
That's good. Well, I mean, and that's funny, but from a business standpoint, or like from growing a business standpoint, it's really neat because you ended up creating a product that was like kind of approachable to everybody in the industry. It's not sewers. I mean, some people will also download sewers and cookbooks and libraries, but you gave it away for free. You made it approachable, and suddenly it's like it's the most downloaded thing. And I mean, if you had at the time, was it 1 or 2 years ago that you did it, you could have put in a little flyer that led people to the store or to another product or to a Kickstarter, and suddenly you've got 10,000 people who are going to download that thing.
Yeah,
you know?
Funny that you say that. That's a little bit of a tangent here, but I've kind of been considering making a branch-off company that only makes really dumb products like Bosco's Spell Compendium, that within each of those free PDFs I would have a link to a Patreon. Because I love the idea of anybody being able to download a product, and I know that not all of our fans have the money for it, but for there to be a little bit of a community that I could build that would let people pitch in whatever they would like to get a dumb series like Punny Spells.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue into you said that Bosco got you a little bit of an audience. How did your audience grow from there?
It's been a little bit of a ride up and down because not every product that we're going to release is going to resonate with people. And Bosco's was one of those things where we, to this day, have yet to have anyone send us an angry email being like, "Oh, this is really dumb," or "I can't believe I spend my money on this," probably because it was free. But I think that our customer base has been growing pretty. I don't know how the camera does this. I don't want to go down or up, but pretty like,
vertical.
If you continue to put out a solid product every single month, I think you're going to have fans that keep coming back to you, which seems like a no-brainer, but is actually a little bit of an unpopular theory, because I know a lot of companies believe you need to put out a product every week, no matter if it's good or bad, because it'll get your name out there. Bam, 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 bam.
Well, I actually remember a guy. It's weird that you bring up that point, because there's a guy that holds the world record for most songs ever created, most product songs on iTunes or something like that. And he makes a song a day, and he sells them for 99 cents. And I forget his name. I heard this on NPR. And I forgot his name. I don't know who he is, but he's very prolific. Yeah. And so if you come out with a product every week, you might make a living off of it like he does, but people aren't going to say, "Oh, I want that product." Or
nobody's going to, suggest it to their friends unless they're like, that's so funny that this guy made a song every day.
You're not going to have a loyal fan base.
No.
Right. And you actually had that come up, like your first. You mentioned Kickstarter. Your first Kickstarter failed, but you knew, we talked about it when it did, and you knew that most of those people wanted you to come back because they liked the idea of that.
Certainly. That's probably something I could talk about for 3 years, but I think this could be bad advice, but it worked for me. If you really want to release something through Kickstarter, and you're afraid that it's not going to fund, I think you should just release it anyways, because if you fail, you're still going to have thousands of people that are going to view it just because it's coming up on their Kickstarter feed. You might I think we only got a sixth of the way through funding, and we ended up building up excitement with this Kickstarter from people who had never heard of us, because this was us releasing a Kickstarter a year into the company. I had zero idea how to build hype. I don't think I even had a video for the Kickstarter. But then a year later, came out with a re-release of the Kickstarter and funded within about a week, because people were genuinely excited, and they were like, wow, this guy was willing to fail and then launch another Kickstarter because he cared about this project enough to look at everybody that he failed,
and adjust that.
So while you're on this subject, for anyone having like apprehension about a Kickstarter, what's the cost of failing there? Like, just for people who don't know, if it doesn't happen, what happens to you?
Pros and cons.
That depends a little bit on how big of a group you are. The larger that your company is, the greater it sucks that you fail, because chances are, if you're a large-ish company, you've already bought most of the art, you'd have already paid the writers, you've already paid for ads, and if it fails, that money just evaporates. But then if you're someone who was like me, who, didn't pay for advertising, I didn't pay for anyone to write the book. I mean, it was partially written, but it was something that, a few friends of mine had written, enough to do a preview. And when it failed, I mean, it probably cost me maybe $50.
Yeah. Well, you had bought that ad, and that was kind of down the drain, but now you've learned that too. So it's, for you, it kind of came out, as you mentioned earlier, that people came back. It was both a learning experience that was valuable and kind of free advertising.
Yeah. I mean, when we launched that Kickstarter, maybe I had lost the money that I had spent on a smallish ad on a web page, and maybe I lost a month from promoting something that never came to fruition yet. But yeah, the sales that I had for my company basically tripled after a bunch of people were like, oh, this Flaming Crab Games company exists. And those fans stuck around, because the hardest thing is getting people to know that you exist.
Right.
Yeah. So you'd say that initial Kickstarter was almost an advertisement in itself.
Completely. I mean, I think you could probably just launch a Kickstarter with a goal that you don't even think that you're going to meet, if you just want people to know that you exist.
What was that potato salad, chicken salad kid?
Yeah,
That was, I mean, he exists and you have to come to terms with that.
Potato Salad Kid could have been running an RPG business, and then everyone would go, "Oh, Potato Salad Publishing. I know that exists now. Maybe I'll check it out."
But that's true. Like anything that the Onion comes out with now or advocates will be automatically successful.
Because everyone knows they exist.
Right. Just like their Kickstarter. Yes. So what I wanted to ask this earlier, but I didn't think it fit. So you've been doing this for how many years now? Is it 5, 4?
I've been scheming for 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
Officially, we put out our first product a little over 3 years ago.
Okay. So if you took all that time and everything that you've learned right now, question A, would you do anything different, and what are those things? And question B, do you think you could do it in less time?
Okay.
No.
Yeah, I just had 50 things run through my head.
Well, what are your biggest failures, for instance? And would you do them again?
Yeah, and that's what I was debating. Maybe I'll talk out loud what I'm thinking, even if I don't point. So something that I still kind of regret doing is I ended up releasing a product where, okay, I'll step it back a bit. So Paizo used to do this thing where once a year they had a competition where you could submit a magic item for Dungeons and Dragons, or Pathfinder. And basically it would be an elimination round until basically they were like, okay, these 8 magic items out of 300 are the best for whatever reason. And then it would go into the next round where it's like, okay, we want these 8 people to write an adventure, and the top 4 people are guaranteed to get a freelance job with Paizo for at least 1 book. And so a lot of people jumped onto that competition because, hey, who doesn't want to write for a large publishing company for 1 product at least? So I decided it would be a great idea to basically be like, hey, all of you people who submitted products to Paizo, I'm going to release a book where basically you can submit magic items to me and I'll publish all of them. Little did I know that a lot of people were on board with that idea. And I ended up getting just literally hundreds of magic items that 2 years later, I'm still trying to get this out the door and still have to pay people for this thing that has been sitting on my desk for a couple of years.
While also trying to run a business.
While trying to run a business with something that's just been sitting in the back for the longest time. However, I don't know if I regret doing it because, of course, a learning experience is always invaluable. I've gotten to know a decent number of people who've worked on the book just from, giving them editing feedback, them going, hey, I work for this larger company. Would you want to try to do work for me? So I kind of regret being maybe perhaps a little too ballsy with my approach, but I never want to tell anybody don't dive into something and fail.
Right. Okay.
So if I did anything different, I would probably not launch that product and then somehow get the learning experience without the failure.
Well, that's the hardest part, right? Well, I guess my other question is, do you think you could get where you are now faster if you do it again?
Yeah, certainly. I think I spent the first year or two trying to figure out what my company was, because the first product that I released was a class that I just wanted to make because I thought it was something fun and clever or whatever, even if it ended up being mediocre. And I just wanted to put that product out there, and I was going to say, okay, I'll make maybe some beer money off of this product and step away from it. And, got suckered into it, and here I am today. But I think if I was going to do it different, and if I had any advice for people, I would say before you jump into it, figure out what your company is going to be first. Don't release like a class and then a book on feats and then a book on magic items and then release a series of really weird, quirky stuff, because I ended up kind of alienating a few fans that were like, I liked that you released this class that was really practical, these feats that were really practical, so on. And then you gave me a book on sewers, magic food. So I'd say it's best to figure out what you're going to do and then commit to it so that you don't lose any fans that get disappointed by the direction of your company swerving around every 3 months while you try to figure out what you're doing. And and then people can look at your backlog and figure out what you're all about and not going, what are these guys about? Because I've half considered deleting older stuff so that we don't confuse people.
Right. Would you say you're still trying to establish that identity, or are you more confident moving forward?
I'm pretty confident moving forward that what we do strongest is making what one reviewer called it Harry Potter magic, where making stuff that's practical magic that's inspiring and wonderful, and something that maybe not everybody wants to use in a game, but we have a product that for anybody.
So, I mean, we're about halfway through this thing. What we need to talk about growing a business specifically, and we've talked about stories, but what?
To tote around it. At one point, did you start? It's just you. When did you start picking up other people?
Yeah.
What is that? How do you hire someone?
Sure. So the first thing I did was, thankfully, when I started working, there was, I want to say it was RPGNet, had this guy that investigated third-party business and figured out what people were paying writers, because prior till about 4 years ago, people were pretty closed about what they did for their business. They didn't really tell you what they paid you until they hired you. I think maybe that still goes on with stuff like artists and whatnot, but our specific tiny industry, it's becoming a lot more transparent. So I read this guy's report and saw what people were getting paid, what kind of payment was considered fair, and I looked and saw what my sales were per month just from me doing it myself, and decided to start hiring people when I figured that what I was getting month to month from what I had written would be about what I needed to pay people that I hired. So just to throw out numbers out there, pretty random, making it up. Let's say I need $50 to hire somebody to write a 5-page book. If I'm making $50 a month from the classes that I had already written, then I would be able to hire somebody to do a book once a month to try to make sure that I'm not losing money from paying people.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, that's a bit weird, but I guess try to make sure that you're making enough money from what you do yourself to start hiring people. So then to hire people, we would basically go onto Pathfinder forums and just go, hey, we're going to be making a book on spooky places for a Halloween book. This is what we're looking for 3 people to write 2,000 words each. Send in your application through this Gmail that we posted in the message board. And then we'd pick 3 people who we decided would be most excited about a spooky book.
What are those applications like?
It was actually just masks.
Yeah, you had to send a picture of yourself in a spooky mask.
Yeah, I think. Hey. And like, if they showed up at your window at night, they got instantly hired.
Double pay.
Yeah, especially very threatening.
Actually, now that I think about it, that's my number one regret.
So yeah, you're never gonna get you haven't seen your wife in months after that.
No. Actually, I met my wife that way. She showed up at my house.
She showed up.
She wrote for that book.
She wrote for that book.
I understand that.
Here we are, and I now in Seattle, never returning.
So what is your weeding out process like when you start getting those? Like, do you get writing samples? And
so I typically recommend that people send me a 1-page sample that is roughly 1/2 what we call fluff, which is basically how well you can write.
No rules.
Basically what you would read in just a typical book. And then 1/2 crunch, which is stuff just like knowing
Rules and numbers.
Really, yeah, rules and numbers. So how well you can do both of those. Most people have a strength in one versus the other. And the other thing that we evaluate is how excited people are about a product. Because we get roughly 30 people to send in an application per book that we hire 3 people. We tend to get somebody who happens to be in college studying that subject.
Oh.
So, for example, for the sewers book that I keep mentioning, we have a sewer engineer from Indianapolis who
ended up being, well, this is such a big industry. Like Gen Con last year had 200,000 people. And so, of course, you meet the one guy who's a sewer engineer. Yeah, and is also in the D&D industry.
Yeah, and anybody that gets into the Pathfinder industry, well, most people that get into it do it as a glorified hobby of sorts. They'll work an engineer job, and then on weekends they'll write. They might work in a sewer right on the weekends.
I guess if you just think about our friend group, we've got a doctor, a geologist, a nutrition and exercise coach, a physicist, a web designer. I mean, that's just
honestly, I started out as somebody that was, studying agriculture and working in a cornfield, and then on weekends writing this stuff. But that's a bit of a tangent.
Well, yeah. Has this made your life easier, hiring all these people? I mean, you don't you make more books faster.
So as you hire people, what does your role become?
It's been mainly an editing and quality control thing, because something that we pride ourselves in is having really tight rules language and making consistent quality products each month, even if we release stuff slower than most companies. So I guess my job is just making sure things meet up to standards, or checking the science behind stuff if it's a science book.
Okay, so a lot of editing and
a lot of
emails,
emailing way too much. So kind of at that point, again, maybe I lied earlier. I'm not 100% sure what the direction of our company is. In 2018, I'm kind of thinking about scaling things back. Because believe it or not, doing emails near constantly isn't as fun as writing zombies.
So where do you see yourself in the future?
Well, funny you say that.
I know exactly where you see it. Something that we wanted to talk about in particular, and then I want to move to Kickstarter before this thing ends. But we can announce now, we because we want to jump on getting this out before someone beats us to it. So they're coming out with Starfinder this week, right?
And as I said, Pathfinder is kind of like a 3rd edition of D&D ramped up, and Starfinder is basically D&D in space.
Yeah, it is. It's a sci-fi with different races, and we were on the beta. We played the beta, and I don't know how much we can talk about that, but I can say that
not
was
too much.
It's not bad. It's just like anything starting out. There's a lot of information, a lot of things to go through. And one of the things we found is that no matter how many times we tried to make characters or make these personalities, space always came out to this new frontier. And we kept going back to this idea of like a frontiersman, a cowboy, or Western tropes. And they just keep coming up in space. And you see them all the time in Star Wars and Star Trek and all of that. And so we're going to launch a Western campaign setting where I'll be doing the art. Space Western, where I'll be doing all the art and you'll be doing all the writing and the roles, and this will be the 2 of us, and we're gonna kill ourselves, but we hope to create like a magnificent game. And it's kind of become, we didn't know we would be into it, right?
Oh, certainly. This is kind of a decision that really got solidified in the last month or so.
Yeah, this is just something we started talking about, and the more we talked about it, the more we realized like this is so cool and really passionate about it. So
yeah, I mean, the stuff that I've been doing the last year has been fun and all, but it's not just sitting back and having an administrative role. It's hard to get super excited about stuff you don't have your own hands in.
And now that you've hired people, you can pass some of that work along, even the Kickstarters and things.
Yeah, I'm sure that I would probably, set up the backbone for the setting, establish things that I think are super important, and then bring in people to do the legwork.
Right. Well, I meant while you're working on this, you can. It's your work, right?
Look, I can vouch for the excitement here because I've been having to listen to these two yap about Starfinder for
Space
months. But even though it's D&D in space, they both managed to make it a Western on their own just through playing it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to be a real wild ride coming up.
I'm sure we do both have Western themed.
I suppose, yeah, when we played Starfinder, it should have been pretty obvious that we were going to do this one. I ended up playing as sheriff, and
you're playing as sheriff,
played
and I'm an
cowboy.
outlaw. So it's just gonna happen. We want to make it the theme of like Firefly, Cowboy Bebop, Trigun,
Yeah.
a little bit of Han Solo in there.
Everything everyone actually loves about space.
Yeah. I was going to say, I appreciate what Starfinder did for their setting, but I don't think it's for us.
I think it would be, rather than, it is going to be space themed, like an opera about space or something like that, but it's a more humanistic approach to space and frontiers and Starfinder. So,
Yeah.
And that kind of like when Kickstarter, that's growing a business in this industry.
Where we're going.
What?
So that's where we're going.
That's where we're going. We're going to do that with our game. But what is Kickstarter?
Yeah, we talked about failures a little bit and tiptoed around it, but you've had some great success there as well.
Yeah, I've had 4 successful Kickstarters in the last couple of years.
Okay.
One of them to fund, well, 2 of them to fund our monthly quirky series. One of them was for the Magic Cookbook, and the other one was just for a book of nearly 300 archetypes.
And so the actual, like your backbone kind of became Kickstarter.
Yeah, Kickstarter is where we get most of our funding. It's where we break even, and then our 3 other storefronts are where we go to develop other products and
profit.
Make profit.
So Kickstarter is really just the funding.
Yeah,
I
think a mistake that we made on our first Kickstarter was asking for way too much money, because when I came into this, I thought, I need to make money from this. I'm going to be spending a year or 2 working on it. I should get paid for what I do. And I think the wisest thing from Kickstarter is to actually attempt to break even and just get all of the base funding that you need from the book, even if it's just $5,000 or so, even if you think you deserve $10,000 or so for the work that you do.
Right.
Because you're going to get your money from going to conventions and selling the book, or even just selling it through online stores if it's a PDF. So if we were asking for advice here, I think I would tell people, figure out how much the art's going to cost, how much printing is going to cost if you can't get it print on demand, and just keep it extremely simple. Only cover that, nothing more. And if you get extra money, great. It also means people want to fund successful Kickstarters. And so one thing that we always see is people that will message us and be like, oh, wow, I really like what you're doing here. I think I'll come back after it's funded, because I'm not really sure if you guys are going to make it, despite the fact that Kickstarter refunds you if it doesn't fund. And so I think your number one priority with Kickstarter is getting funded as fast as possible, because it gets people excited when they're like, oh, man, I'm funding this thing that's getting 5 times as much money as it initially wanted, despite the fact that it may not actually be that much money. So
what you're saying, like, even if you put let's say you put, I don't know, 8 hours a day for a month into Kickstarter, you shouldn't be billing those hours in your goal. It should really just be the product.
Certainly. And that part of the cost of business is dealing with the fact that you're going to have to deal with not grabbing that money from Kickstarter, grabbing it from other sales. And that's a lot of running the business, is not trying to get the money now from the work that you're doing now and trying to get money 6 months, a year in the future for work that you're doing now. If you're running a business, if you're an artist, that's different because you're paid by commission. But if you run a business, you've really got to look a year in the future. And it's going to be, for me, half the time, if I'm not funding something through Kickstarter, it takes about a year before the costs of a book break even, and that's perfectly fine. It just means that the money I make now is from 2015.
Well, how did you? You're talking about getting it totally funded should be the goal, absolutely. But how did your rewards play into that on Kickstarter? And how do you handle that?
Yeah, what do I make my rewards?
Well, you make your rewards. You know,
You
a
don't
common
know.
mistake that people make when they start Kickstarter is they want to go, oh man, I'm making the coolest thing ever.
Mhm.
I want to make t-shirts.
Mhm.
I want to make dice. I want to make
That's
posters.
money.
I want to make
So
money
much.
from this.
Mhm.
But what you don't realize is that if you have t-shirts, dice, stuff like that, A, most people don't care at all about your t-shirts. B, the money that you're going to get from t-shirts is going to be way worse than what you get from a book, an art book or whatever.
Yeah, and
And
just
it's-
spending the time figuring out small, medium, and large for 1,000 people would be insane for one person.
Yeah, it's enough work just fulfilling, books digitally to people. I couldn't imagine dealing with shirts and dice and all that.
Hmm.
And if anything, I'm kind of happy that our first Kickstarter failed because I want to say that we wanted to do t-shirts and stuff like that, and that would have been a nightmare. So I think with your rewards, you need to think about how much time you're actually willing to put into a project, because if you're actually willing to put in a lot of time that's not building the actual product, I think it's great to throw in high rewards that might be $100 or even $500, where you make personalized stuff that makes people really feel involved with the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So for example, with our letters Kickstarter, we said we were going to release the products bi-monthly, but if you gave us $400 or so, we would totally write the book that you want. We would do illustrations that you want,
Right.
and just totally devote this book to you. But only do that if you have the time for it, because it's an enormous time sink.
Yeah, you talked about how Kickstarter season is your busiest time because you're really just replying to emails a lot during Kickstarter. Would you say that? And then you just mentioned the time after the Kickstarter, so it's like you're really saying that even though you're really funding a project, the month of the Kickstarter and then maybe the month or two after it is really just committed to only that thing. It's not
Correct.
just a 1 month.
Yeah, you're going to have to do surveys. You're going to have to message people.
God.
Funding's going to be weird. When you're running a Kickstarter, you've got to understand that you're committing probably a year to this thing, and it's not just the 1 month that you run the campaign that you can sit back and go, oh, I got $5,000.
We originally, Bear and I talked about it, talked about misconceptions, right? Because a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions, and like you oftentimes don't have the ability to sit down with someone growing a business and just spitball questions. So can we spitball questions to you?
Yeah.
Bear, spitball questions.
All right. If you're comfortable talking about it, I'll stay on Kickstarter while we can. Would you be able to break down, where you made the most money in the payment tiers, like $1, $5, $10? Like for you, what worked out the best for you in that system?
Yeah.
So for pure profit, the high rewards are going to get you the most money. They're nice because, if your goal is $2,000 and you've got 4 rewards that are $500 and people commit to those, you're funded, the rest. But for the time that you put into something, usually it's your middle goals, like us selling just the base package. The $25 reward, for example, is going to be where you get your most money for the least amount of time. I think Kickstarter tells people that you should make your base reward $25, and I think from what I've seen, that's wise. Okay.
We talked about this the other day. Is there a specific time on social media you need to post for your Kickstarter?
Well, I think the best time, most people that back Kickstarters are going to be, quite frankly, people that are bored at work, making decent amount of money. That's going to be your base audience 90% of the time. So I think it's good to spam people just about every day, But if you're going to push like a really big art piece or news, you should do it during a time when people are going to be looking at their computers at work, which tends to be Tuesdays, Thursdays, mid to late morning, when people have finished their duties for the morning and they're just waiting.
Like Kickstarters and analytics say that Saturday, Sunday, and Monday are the biggest times for people being on Facebook, but you don't see that consistency in your backers.
That's when they're on Facebook. That's not when they're willing to give you money.
So mindset plays into it.
Yeah, if you're going to do a hype, if you want to, spread the news that you're launching a Kickstarter, Wednesdays are good. But weekends are good. But if you actually want people to click, pull out their debit card and pay you, you should probably do it between Tuesday and Thursday.
When they're miserable at work and want to contribute to
society. Money to make their life better.
Something to look forward to on a job.
Yeah.
So we talked about a lot of positive stuff. Freelancer wise, have you ever had someone that you just had to email and be like, get it together or get out of this project?
Okay, I want you to answer that, but I want you to say the thing that happened to you last week.
Say it. You don't have to mention names.
You don't have to be exact. Just tell us.
Okay. What's your language filter on this thing?
Go for it.
Whatever you want.
Okay. So, sometimes you'll have people that think that they're either lying, pulling your leg, or think that you've signed a contract with them, whatever, that a year ago you told them no, and then 6 months ago you told them no, and then today they're going to email you, and that person is just pissed off because you won't say yes. And you'll finally tell them no. They don't get the hint, which is no. And you have to just say, please stop talking to me or I'll block you, or just something to get them out of your face. Because typing to those people takes time, and that's work hours that you're telling people no. And last week I had a gentleman get very upset at me when I told him I wouldn't publish his class that he sent to me a year and a half ago that I said no to. And basically just went on this giant tirade about how I hated men because I hire women as writers sometimes, and called me a lot of words that are synonyms to homosexual. I don't know. If you're running a business, I think you have to deal with trolls or people that get extremely pissed off because they think their work is the best because they've made it. But that's not related to your question, Bear, because that's not me turning down a freelancer midway through a project. That's me just saying no, and then a guy snapping.
It's part of the process, though.
But yeah, people that you have had to say, I don't think you're right for this industry, or
if somebody, this probably varies person to person and how patient you are and how much you value your time. But sometimes you're just going to have to tell people no, even if it's later in the process than you thought it would be. Maybe the project is half completed and they're just not understanding the project. And semi-tangent, it's incredibly important to have a contract created where you can pull the plug if somebody just isn't delivering, not writing the product that you're trying to pay them to do. And you have to sit them down and be like, okay, this is the book I want you to write. You keep sending me something else, or we're just not seeing eye to eye. Sorry, we're going to have to call it quits from here. And I think that's the toughest part of the job, is telling people who have been nice to you no, simply because they don't understand your vision, whether it's a communication error on your end or their end. It doesn't really matter.
There's something I've encountered, especially with like artist representatives. They make it very clear, if the answer is no, we're just not going to email you back at all.
Yeah, so you're lucky if somebody gets back to you a lot, right? That's why I like that you email people back sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I try to email back people every time. I mean, I know how much work and courage it takes to write somebody, and I want to give people that time. But I think it's important to be stern when you tell people no, no matter how tough that is.
But also,
He's a good guy.
critique or come even if you're not saying come back to me, you can say this isn't right for you. Look for something else. Right?
Yeah,
or just flat out no.
I think flat out no is better because I guess you can never really know the potential of somebody, and maybe they sent you a really junk product, but then maybe a year down the line they end up becoming good. I mean, the first thing that I wrote, quite honestly, if I got that from myself now, I'd be like, sorry, I don't want to publish this.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think
I had another question.
Yeah, go.
I wanted to know if piracy is an issue with you since you publish PDFs.
That's a good question. Yes, it happens. I don't think it's a problem because everyone's got their own opinion. My personal one is that if somebody is pirating your product, they're not going to buy it anyways.
True.
They might tell their friends about it, and I had some guy actually admit to me, like, I feel really shitty about this, but my friend pirated this product and I really liked it and ended up buying it.
Well, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really kind of astounding point. If someone pirates your product, they're not going to buy it anyway. Do you think that applies to art? Like if someone pirates a high quality version of whatever for their background, they probably weren't going to buy your.
I mean, if they're going to go through the effort to pirate something, they're not going to go, oh, geez, this is getting kind of difficult to pirate it. I guess I'll shell out $50.
Yeah, I've never done that. Not that I've pirated anything.
You always see that argument. People are like, I pirate music, and if I like it, I go buy it. Or I pirate a game, and if I like it, I go buy it.
And then you have people like Bear. Bear never pirates music. He doesn't even use Spotify.
I don't own the first song. I don't listen to music. It's totally silent around here every day.
Yeah. Now you only buy direct from the artist if you can, right?
I haven't seen my wife in months. Yeah, I do. I buy all my music. I work for a record store, so I mostly just steal records every day.
Right. Yeah, you got inspired by Josh talking about jobs, and you went and got one.
I went and got one immediately because I knew it would make my art better.
And your wife got accepted to grad school.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Kelsey Isles.
There you go. Everybody, congrats, Kelsey.
Yeah.
Look, guys, we're going to be bouldering this weekend. Message us if you want to play. We probably won't let you play with us, but we might.
We will. We might record it. Baldur's Gate Black Pits
2.
Yeah. We're going to be doing Black Pits Part 2.
We should record Black Pits Part 2.
2 or 3 people who don't know how to play.
We actually only use the console and kill everyone. If you know what we're talking about, get at us, though. All right. Well, that's it. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you so much.
Look forward to our upcoming Space Western. Look forward to next week where we're going to hang out with is next week just us?
Yeah, next week it's Hanging Out with Bear and Allen.
Hanging Out with Bear and Allen Part 3.
After that, we got Nashville musician Cole Bearden. We're going to be talking about some sci-fi stuff. It'll be a good time.
Right. Yeah. Cole Bearden. I don't know him. I'm going to look him up. You guys should look him up.
Yep. Check out Creature Comfort, a few of his bands, The New Shadow.
Creature Comfort, New Shadow. Okay. Alex, where can people find you?
You can either find me on Facebook, Flaming Crab Games, or you can send me an email, flamingcrabgames@gmail.com.
All right. Well, that's us. If you want to find us more on Facebook, it's Hanging Out with Bear and Allen or Hanging Out Podcast, I think. Our Gmail, if you want to talk to us, if you want to be on our show, if you have something you want us to talk about or get a guest on, it's hangingoutpodcast@gmail.com. We got an Instagram, Facebook, listen on SoundCloud, on iTunes. And, tweet it James Jean for us.
James Jean, get on this show. We're coming at you.
Yeah.
James Jean.
James Jean, everybody get on your phone right now. Tell James Jean, Hanging Out Podcast.
We're all going to do it. We're going to see you next week.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks for hanging out.